Black professionals, doctors, lawyers, other folks settle here, invest. Think about the Masonic Lodge, the Prince Hall Lodge, really a strong community that rises up here adjacent to the university. Walkable, mixed use, so you have churches, homes, businesses, everything all mixed up together there. So how did this happen? This was initially discussed back in 2000 as part of a redevelopment plan that included a preservation element. The first draft of the designation report happened that same year. It was included in the comprehensive plan when that document was adopted in 2009, and then community engagement during 2011 led to the creation of the district in 2012. I wanted you to see this just to remind you how much engagement happened to make this district. So all those boxes across the top of this timeline are meetings, and all the boxes across the bottom are letters that were sent to property owners in the proposed district during the evaluation period. And then in 2012, just before the district was created, this is a map that shows you who was in favor and who was in not. So green is in favor of the district. The yellow properties were either a neutral or maybe. Red is a hard no. And then there were some inconclusive results that are shown in gray. So just wanted to help you see what this looked like when it was created back in 2012. I would note that most of the properties that were opposed at the time of creation have already been removed from the district. So the boundary has changed since creation. The original boundary included all of the areas in the black line here, but also in yellow, orange, blue, and green back in 2012 when the district was approved. Since then, the first removal, that yellow set of parcels happened in 2015. That property has not redeveloped. Property removed again in 2022 in the blue area, and then the Shaw rezoning, the most recent removal from the district shown there in orange. Pending item, also on your agenda today, is shown in green in the upper left-hand corner of the district today. So what's in the district today? There are 102 parcels, including a couple of city-owned lots, 52 contributing structures. Buildings in the district date between 1875 and last year. There are 29 vacant parcels. Since the creation of the district, 10 vacant parcels have transitioned to developed parcels with new construction or relocated structures. A little bit of context. So staff decision on certificate of appropriateness averages right around 100 items a year. Major work that's reviewed by the commission, the certificate of appropriateness committee, range between 40 and 60 most years. The Prince Hall numbers make up a very small percentage of that. So there are 8 districts in the city, and in a big year, Prince Hall represents 10, which is only 10% of the staff decisions, and an even smaller percentage of the quasi-judicial decisions. And then this map shows you where certificates of appropriateness have been pursued in the district since its creation. You can see that pretty much every property has pursued a certificate of appropriateness in the last 12 years. Lots of red stars here, lots of process happening. And just a quick reminder about that process, meant to review and guide changes so that what happens is measured against the qualities of the district, right? So that things fit in and are compatible, sympathetic. The Raleigh Historic Development Commission created a Prince Hall ad hoc committee last year and spent across 6 meetings talking over the district, talking with folks in the property owners, residents in the district, did some work to promote awareness of the district, and also did some work to gather information from folks in the district. Ultimately, the committee did not make a recommendation back to the Raleigh Historic Development Commission. There was a change in committee membership as well as a change in availability of members at their final meeting, and they did not make a conclusive recommendation to the commission. We've provided information in the agenda about the survey, but I wanted to show some of this to you. So this is a map that shows who responded and who didn't, and what the response was like. So the thing that there are a lot of people who don't respond. All these parcels marked in gray don't respond. There are a good number of parcels that respond and say they do want to be removed, others that respond and say they want to be in, others who are undecided. I would say that when you think about how many owners there are here and how few of, basically 40% of the district did not respond. I think we're hearing from the people who feel most strongly on either side of the issue, right? Who feel most strongly. So 39% of no response, 16% say to keep, 11% are undecided, and then the 34% to remove are interested in removal. And this represents 81 unique owners in the district.
And that's the total number of parcels then?
This is by owner, not parcel.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is by parcel. There are 100 parcels. So 33 of the parcels, 33%, not represented in the survey results. A third of the properties not responding. And then 38% of the vacant parcels, there are 29 vacant parcels, 38% of those vacant parcels are not responding in the survey. We had a question at the council table when you referred this here about Black property owners and what they thought. We do not have conclusive, perfect information about how many Black property owners there are in the district. Of the people who responded, there were 6 folks who self-identified as Black, and they represent 15 parcels in the district. And that's what's shown here. So there was somebody who was undecided, 4 who wanted to keep the district, and then 10 who were in favor of removal. We also have comments from the chair of the Historic Development Commission, if you would like to hear that now, or just tell me, I don't know how you want to manage your meeting, sir.
Yeah, I think the plan was get the staff presentation, then have RHDC present their discussion and findings, and we'll go from there.
All right, well, here comes Katie Pate to tell you about the commission's perspective.
Thank you, Bynum, and good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and committee members. It's good to see you all again. I'm Katie Pate, the chair of the RHDC. Thank you so much for the continued attention and care paid to this unique historic neighborhood. Today I will discuss RHDC's recommendation for the Prince Hall HOD. RHDC's mission is to identify, preserve, protect, and promote Raleigh's historic resources. On Tuesday, April 16th, RHDC held its regular meeting with 11 of 12 members present. The commission heard the report from the Prince Hall HOD ad hoc committee and had a lengthy discussion about preservation options for the HOD. As a reminder, the options that we discussed included maintaining the current boundaries of the district, changing the district from a general HOD to a street-side HOD, reducing the HOD's boundaries to eliminate certain vacant parcels, updating the special character essay for the district, and a mixture of these options. RHDC voted 10-1 to recommend that there be no changes to the boundaries of the Prince Hall Historic Overlay District and that the special character essay for the district be updated. So we discussed many reasons for this recommendation. Some of the most significant reasons are listed here, including that this recommendation aligns with prior policy of this commission. Previous requests to be removed from the HOD were initiated because owners wanted to avoid the COA process, not due to a loss of historic significance. For example, a 2022 applicant submitted and then withdrew their COA application before a decision was even made by the committee. Prince Hall is one of 2 historically Black HODs in the city, and there are serious equity issues associated with continuing to dismantle the Prince Hall HOD, as this type of piecemeal removal of parcels hasn't happened in other HODs, even those that are proximate to downtown development. Also, statewide, there's no recorded instance of removal of an HOD without the loss of historic character, which hasn't occurred here. And empty lots do not indicate a lack of history, and we should be conscious of the inequities that led to their vacancy in the first place. There's no policy that prohibits new construction on vacant parcels in HODs. These spaces actually present an opportunity for creative infill that reinforces the unique character and history of this district. And finally, new construction on the vacant parcels and updates to existing structures are encouraged in HODs. So here's a timeline of the rezonings since the HOD was established in 2012. The Commission has recommended denial of all previously approved rezoning requests to remove parcels from the district, and our recommendation that we presented aligns with our previous recommendations. Again, here is a map of the boundaries as they exist today to reflect previously approved rezoning cases that removed a collection of historic buildings from the district. And you can see that the changes to the district over time, the black outline shows the current HOD boundaries, and the shaded parcels were once part of the district and then removed through the rezoning process. In regards to the survey, this is like an unprecedented type of post-historic designation polling in North Carolina, and this is not generally considered a best practice by preservationists. We consider that the survey is largely inconclusive, as this data does not reflect the opinions of the entire district or the pro-designation attitudes from the community and the city council that led to the creation of the district in 2012. So 62% of owners, including individuals and business entities, responded to the survey, and 44% of those respondents want to remain in the district or are undecided. Here again is some racial demographic information collected from the survey, and there are 100 parcels in the district, and of the 50 responding owners, only 6 Black property owners answered and provided racial identity information, which is a very small sample. Again, these numbers are inconclusive, and the survey results are one of many factors that the Commission considered when we made our recommendation. And here you can see some examples of projects that successfully engaged in the COA process to build or improve structures within the Prince Hall HOD. These changes to the district are welcome. Applicants have many resources, including the COA process, the help of city staff, and pro bono design guidance from the Design Review Advisory Committee. There's absolutely no requirement or expectation that vacant lots remain that way. So we do appreciate the City Council's thoughtful review of this matter, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have questions for staff or for RHDC? Councilmember Black.
So I think you might get into it. Are you doing more presentation after these questions?
Not from me. I
Okay.
think, yeah, there's some members of the public here.
You talked about updating the special character essay. Can you go into like what that means and what that would look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to jump in if you want to illuminate on anything else. But the special character essay is the document that the Certificates of Appropriateness Committee uses as design guidelines to measure whether a proposed project aligns with the historic character of the district. So updating that special character essay was part of a planned review process, and it would just be looking at that to make sure that it is reflective of the historic character of the district, and to just tweak it if necessary.
You guys said you recommend updating it, so is that something that planning is looking into now?
So the commission made that recommendation to you, and at the time that you received that recommendation, you referred the item here.
Okay.
So council has not acted on any recommendation that the commission made. So you would need to tell staff that you want for us to make those revisions to the character essay.
Are you going to be talking about what sort of revisions you're looking at later on in the presentation? I see it, like I scrolled down past questions and I see it has update special character. Are you going to talk about it more later?
I wasn't planning to, but I can. I mean, I think Chair Pate has done a really great job of describing what would happen. We would review the character essay, evaluate if there are any ways that it needs to be updated. I think the commission's interest was making sure that the content of that essay was fresh in light of the ongoing changes to the boundary here. If there was anything that could be done to improve the essay to help result in clearer outcomes, more predictable outcomes.
And so if we were to authorize staff to update the essay, then you would be bringing us back options or language to approve later.
That's right.
Mayor, did you have any more questions, Councilmember Black? Mayor?
Bynum, could you walk us back to that slide and show us where the vacant lots are?
Absolutely. I think I have this on a different, here we go. Yeah. So this map shows in blue the parcels that are currently vacant, and you can see the district boundary outlined in brown, with a brown hatch.
And which ones are parking lots?
I can try at that. I believe this one is, this one. I'm going to ask Aaron and Colette if they can help me mark more.
That one across from the 10 is, yeah.
There you go.
And we'll have to check aerials to make sure.
All right, my follow-up question, of those lots, or the vacant lots, how many people responded again to the survey?
So of the vacant lots, we didn't hear from 12 owners of vacant lots out of the 29.
But the majority asked to, of the vacant lot.
The
asked
people
to
who
be
did
removed.
respond, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Fort?
Yeah, this question is for RHDC. So I noticed the survey results seem to indicate the majority of folks want it to be removed or have the HOD removed. Is that correct? That is correct, right?
Of the votes that we received, yes, but that does not represent a majority of the owners in total.
Can you tell me a little bit, what's the discrepancy or what's the difference between the two numbers?
I'm actually not sure right off.
So you have 81 unique owners. You didn't hear from 31 of them.
So you did hear from 50 of those.
You
So
heard from 50.
still is the majority.
And of those, 28 of the 50.
Wanted to be removed. Okay. And when you had your meeting in April, did you have folks like come to the meeting to express that they wanted to stay? And I guess I'm just trying to figure out, how do you get to the conclusion that y'all don't want to remove it if it seems like the majority of the correspondence you received was from folks who did want it removed? So I'm just trying to figure out what the thought process was there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the survey is just one piece of many things that we considered. We did have members from the public come to our meeting and give a comment that day. And the members of the public who were there who live in the district are people who specifically wanted to remain in the historic overlay district. It is the reasons for us coming to that conclusion are complex. And again, this survey is just not the reflection of the entire picture here. We are looking at the conditions in the community when the HOD was established. We looked at precedent and how these things have not played out in other historic overlay districts. We discussed the existing history there, and also just the planning impact of removing or changing the boundaries of the HOD doesn't make sense to have pinholes in a historic overlay district, or to give special treatment to owners of vacant parcels when there is a process in place that they can use to build on those parcels.
Yeah.
Really quickly, just a follow-up. I know you mentioned the conditions that were in place when the HOD was implemented were different back then. So would the conditions of the HOD area now maybe more favorable or lend itself to removing it if that's what the owners are requesting? Or I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of where y'all are coming from.
For sure. My understanding on that is that it is not typical to remove a historic preservation or a historic overlay district in response to a turnover in ownership and those owners not wanting the HOD there. It would be because of historic integrity was lost in that district, or there was some loss of historic significance, which just hasn't occurred here. So that removing an HOD for that reason is unprecedented in this state. There is no case that we found or that staff found in their research that reflects removing an HOD because ownership turnover resulted in those owners not wanting the district there.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts, but we have folks from the public here who I know want to speak. We also have another item on our agenda, which is so closely related to this item that it's sort of like item 1A and 1B, because the next item on our agenda is a vacant property in the district that's asking to be removed. So I think what I'd like to do is let's move to the next item, get the staff presentation like we do for rezoning cases, hear from the applicant, and then I'll turn it over to the public to be able to talk, and then we'll finish with the discussion at the table.
So the rezoning in question is Z7222. This is at 423 South Blunt Street. And it's on the east side of Blunt, just south of Davie, between Davie and Cabarrus. This is 0.13 acres. The current zoning there is DX3 Urban General with the overlay. And the request is to go to DX12, the same frontage and some conditions. Our HDC made no recommendation. Planning Commission recommended denial. This public hearing opened in September and was continued. The applicant was pursuing a certificate of appropriateness, and that did not resolve with a certificate of appropriateness being granted. This came back to public hearing in February and was continued again, and has been continued to go along with the report on the ad hoc committee, and also now is here in front of you. The case has not changed since you opened that first public hearing in September of last year. So that's it. There's no change, right? This is still a 20-story request with a handful of conditions. Yeah.
If you are here from the public and you want to speak, could you just raise your hand? Okay, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Yes, Councilmember Ford has a question for Bynum.
I bet Bynum can anticipate my question.
Oh, hit me.
Planning Commission denied 6-2.
Yeah. So there were two folks on the commission who were familiar with the developer's work in other parts of the city, felt like it would be a quality project, and thought that it would be of value to downtown, and they could see a path where it would make sense to approve the rezoning. And the rest of the commission did not agree with that. They thought it was important to keep the district in place and for development to happen within the parameters of the certificate of appropriateness process.
Councilmember Black.
If you could refresh my memory on this case, I remember it coming to us a few times, but specifically, why wasn't the COA granted for this project?
I'm going to ask Colette and Aaron to respond to that because I think they have better detail than I do.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Colette Canane, Planning and Development. The Certificate of Appropriateness process is a quasi-judicial review. They have very specific and limited parameters through which they're evaluating an application. And that is tied to the special character of the district. And they use the design guidelines for Raleigh's historic districts and landmarks to guide their decision-making. The particular request was for a 12-story structure, and in their deliberation, the committee felt that there is no evidence that can be provided to illustrate that a structure of that height could be found congruous with the special character of the district. The tallest structure in the district is currently the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge, which is a tall 3 stories. And using the special character, the existing and even historic structures that are no longer present in the neighborhood, there was no support for approving a structure that would be so drastically different in height.
It was all about height.
That was the primary concern. There were some other concerns addressed about, I think it was the north and south wall did not have, they were pretty much solid walls. I think there was a band of windows in the north wall, and there was concerns about the fenestration pattern and how that would align with the district. But I think height was the primary driver of that concern.
Okay. I counted, I think, around 10 people, including the applicant for this case. So everyone will get 3 minutes to talk. We're moving through this agenda pretty quickly. I am going to start with the applicant's attorney and just sort of follow the traditional cadence of how we do rezoning cases. This is not a rezoning public hearing, so I do not have to do the same amount of time for both. Everyone's just going to get 3 minutes. That's right? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group, on behalf of the applicant here. As you mentioned, there are 2 big things going on here. One is the specific rezoning. The other has to do with the district. Because they are so tightly tied together, I'd like to first quickly just point out that we have been hearing sort of informally so far some feedback regarding particular zoning conditions that may be helpful in knitting this into the area. That is something we continue to look at. We expect to be able to come up with a proposal. I would love to hear any specifics from this group today if that's possible. But the larger issue is the vacant parcels. As you know, this is one of the vacant parcels. As far as how vacant parcels should be handled in a historic district, all we know is sort of what we have heard. And we've heard from City of Raleigh staff. We've also heard from the State Historic Preservation Office. This is a slide that was presented at the RHDC meeting in April. These are the best practices for setting a historic district boundary. There are 4 of them. The first one is hard to apply in this district. We can actually skip over that. The second 2 have to do with concentration significance, also important, but not what I want to focus on in my short time today. Happy to come back to any of that.
Can you pause the clock real quick? If you go over, I can just give everyone else a little bit more time.
Okay.
This is very important. We've seen the long history of us considering this case. I'd rather get it right than be rushed, and don't feel like everyone has to take all their time if we do more for other people, but we'll make it work. Go ahead.
Appreciate that.
I can tell you're like really trying to get through, so I'd rather get the information so we can make a fully informed decision.
Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll talk about all 4 of these factors, contiguity is difficult here. And this is understandable. We know that the fourth ward was decimated. We know that the third ward, although the bones are sort of still there with the streets, also hard to put together a fully contiguous district. So I think we have to set that aside given this is what's left. The next two factors as far as these best practices really relate to each other very strongly. So where you have a concentration of historic buildings and sites, as well as a significance and some historic integrity, these things start to come together into a coherent district. And here, the source we've heard from on this is the State Historic Preservation Office. They responded in 2012 when the district was set. They repeated this advice again in 2023 here in this letter on your screen. That the original boundary included vacant lots and non-contributing resources that they recommended excluding back in 2011. So they provided a map that showed what boundary proposal would concentrate those historic resources, matching those best practices we saw from City of Raleigh staff, and justifiably removing those vacant lots. And this is the map that they provided. You see that the areas in pink they had suggested back in 2011 should come out, should not be part of this district. They were never part of that significance. The fourth factor that we saw in the staff presentation was that it was really about how to handle vacant parcels. How should they best be included?
You're about to get a buzzer. Can you just put another 3 minutes up, please?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So with respect to vacant parcels, we have some very specific guidance, and it's that they should be included as connectors between historic buildings. On the left of your screen is a map of the contributing buildings, and that's really just for reference as we focus on the right-hand side of the screen, which is the map of vacant lots that you saw previously. And those red squares are there to highlight which of the vacant lots are not performing that connecting function that we saw is the best practice for creating this coherent historic district. All the ones circled in red are not doing that. The orange ones, those are a little bit different because they're on corners, so they expand a historic block face without necessarily filling a gap. So that's a little bit of a different situation. This is how those non-connecting vacant parcels align with the map that the State Historic Preservation Office recommended back in 2011 and repeated again in 2023. So the two sources we have for guidance on how to make this coherent district agree. They align perfectly that as far as how to incorporate vacant lots, there's simply no standard that would indicate they should be included in this district. So this would not impact the significance, the concentration of the actual historic resources, because these vacant lots are not connecting those resources. This is what many of them look like today, as you are familiar. This is the rezoning site in question in particular as well. So with that additional background, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the request. Like I said, we certainly are looking for additional feedback with respect to particular changes that would be helpful with respect to this rezoning request, and we absolutely intend to bring back additional zoning conditions.
Stop the clock there. You ended up with 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Do you have any specific questions for Molly? Or I'm not ready to talk yet until we hear from the public. So if we don't have questions, we
I
can.
want to wait.
Okay. I don't know if I'm going to get yelled at by saying this, but maybe if we could get folks to just line up, or do we have to keep the aisles clear? Who tells
No,
us
you
to?
can have them line
If
up.
you guys just want to line up, we're going to put 3 minutes on the clock. We're going to use it as a loose guide like we did for the applicant's attorney. And if you need more time, we can get you up to another 2 minutes, but please do not feel compelled to take all of it, but you're welcome to if you'd like. So whoever would like to talk could please just sort of get in queue. All right, go ahead.
Hi there. I'm Curtis Casefang. I am a resident of Oakwood, 519 Polk Street. I was on the Historic Districts Commission for 8 years, all that time on the COA committee, 4 of those as chair. During the creation of the listing for Prince Hall Historic District, during that first round, and attended a lot of the meetings that happened around the creation of that historic district. I'm also part of Preservation Raleigh. My colleagues behind me are all back here if they could stand up just so you can see them. we're here to help advocate for historic districts, obviously, but we're also here to help you make decisions and offer you good information. Avoiding any repetition here, you have to understand Prince Hall Historic District, the amount of contact with the public that went into creating that district was enormous. Response from 70% of the affected people in that district is unprecedented in any other rezoning case. And as a resident of a historic district, when you agree to that listing, you're making an agreement with the city that you're giving up a little of your autonomy to gain a lot of certainty about the future of your property and what's going to happen around you. And so to pull that out from under them is a terrible thing, frankly. As far as my relationship with the Historic Districts Commission, I was also on DRAC for 10 years where we heard a lot of cases. A number of the cases of the projects that were removed from the historic district were ones I was working on with them to help them get through, to get listing. And I'm happy to get into those a little further. One of the things I want you to do is when you look at Prince Hall Historic District, think of Oakwood. I know Oakwood is the wealthy community on the edge of downtown, and that's how we think of it now. When Oakwood was listed, it was terrible. It was a center of prostitution and drug dealing. It was full of rooming houses, and it had a lot of vacant lots. And there's been a ton of infill. And you can't tell that that's infill in there because they were done according to the guidelines, which are very specific about the infill. And I'm happy to get into that further if you would like more information there. One of the things I would say specifically about Prince Hall too is we look at the houses, but it is the community that is really part of what got that listing and dictated that shape. And part of it was its relationship and tie to both Shaw and Stronach's Alley, which were both major centers of a lot that happened in Raleigh that we should be quite proud of, including SNCC and its role in the civil rights movement. So this is, thank you. This is all part of it. As far as the other case, the 12-story building, that building, when the COA committee heard it, denied on its height, on the blank faces. Also, the building that was proposed was not buildable as designed. So we knew that there would be changes beyond that. So it left a lot of questions open about what was doing there. But if you look on top of that at your comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan says that when you put a new building, a tall building, adjacent to a residential neighborhood, that building should not exceed the height of a 45-degree line coming off of the adjacent property. And that would have crossed the 4th floor of the proposed building. So that proposal did not even meet the comprehensive plan in any way, shape, or form. So there were a lot of issues there. Let's see. I'm open to questions, if there are questions you might have for me. I just wanted to get through that quickly so you had that info. Is there any questions you have?
It sounds like you've got a tremendous amount of background with this particular area.
Yeah.
So, and I guess this is a question that I guess asked previously, but kind of want get your perspective. When the Historic Overlay District was originally implemented, the neighborhood was very different at the time, correct, with different owners and things along
Different
those lines.
owners, and it was in worse condition, yes.
So now that there's been changes in ownership and things along those lines, and you've gotten the responses of a survey with folks indicating that they want to have the district removed, how would you justify keeping it in place if the majority of the folks want to have it removed?
Well, listing became about the will of the people who were in the district at the time, and we had 70% of the residents and owners in favor of the listing, and of them, 70% were for the listing of the district, so it was overwhelming. Designating a district, you're saying that this place was important in history. And yes, people may move into that district and decide they want out, but they moved into that district knowing that there were those restrictions. So I find it hard to take that in too heavy consideration above the history of the district, which goes beyond the current owners and goes to the future owners and the past owners. I think that's a very difficult thing. I also understand you guys have been hearing a lot of misinformation about the limitations that are happening on those properties. Things like, I can't replace my windows. If you have to, you can replace your windows. There is a bias towards maintaining the historic fabric. I can't replace my roof. You can absolutely replace your roof. You do not need a COA for maintenance. You only need a COA for change. The idea that it's somehow freezing the district, it doesn't freeze the district. If you look at Oakwood and look at the history of building permits pulled in Oakwood, and I use that Oakwood because I'm most familiar with it, but I've lived there for so long, and it's one of the oldest historic districts. There's more change in Oakwood than there is outside of Oakwood. And it doesn't feel that way because the change has been managed so that it is in character with the rest of the district. If you go down Watauga Street, and Jason Oakwood, between the cemetery and Oakwood, everything opposite side of the street of the cemetery is infill, and most people don't know that. Those were vacant lots. That's where the Fallon's greenhouses were. So there is everything possible for Prince Hall Historic District to become a very, frankly, wealthy neighborhood in the long run and still retain its character. There is no negative impact in the long run on that neighborhood to be a historic district. In fact, it's likely to be extremely positive impact. And certainly that's been the experience in Oakwood. Okay, thank you all.
Good afternoon. I'm Wallace Green, 6800 Woodhaven Court in Raleigh. I come primarily as a representative of the Tupper Memorial Church. I am their real estate advisor. And I have at one time or another represented almost all of the commercial owners of property along the 500 block, from Tupper down to the Colby Hayes property at the corner of Lenore and Blunt. Yeah, it's interesting. You can look at this from multiple perspectives. From a public policy standpoint, I always start with the question of in whose interest should something happen. I represented, I got involved here probably at the sponsorship of the city of Raleigh. I was president of the Raleigh Area Development Authority. And one of the things I got in the beginning of that process was to get to know the institutional owners. Churches, universities, owners of commercial properties. So I speak from the perspective of the owners of commercial property, which is primarily along Blunt Street, the 500 block of Blunt Street. And I first got involved from a project standpoint before the district was created. And that was with representing the interests of the General Baptist State Convention. At the corner of Wilmington and Lenore. And they came to me and said they had purchased property outside of downtown at that time, possibly to relocate from downtown, and decided as an organization that they wanted to remain downtown. And so my advice to them, having seen development in other cities, that they had significant value in the vertical potential of that site, that they could utilize to find a partner to leverage the value of that to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, which was to remain downtown. And in understanding what the city was doing at that time, prior to the designation of this district, was investing in the convention center. And as a matter of public policy, wanting more hotels downtown. So my advice to General Baptist was, let me go find you a partner to develop a hotel that would also include in that development space for you to be permanently downtown. And we accomplished that, and that process has been in rezoning now, and that was the first time, I think, that the city rolled back a portion of the historic district to facilitate development that was not only in the interest of this particular landowner, but in the interest of the economic development policy of the city itself. So It was a perfect alignment.
I can put 2 more minutes on it if you need it.
Okay, a perfect alignment of the interests of the city with the interests of the property owner, and that is in process as we speak. From the perspective of Tupper, we're in a similar situation. When the city was looking to recover or get the Sir Walter Hotel back as an economic development piece, as a restored historic hotel downtown, the owners of that building were looking for where can we relocate the residents of the Sir Walter Hotel, and we had a project together with Tupper on the site now of the Tupper Church, which was not feasible because of the zoning limitation on that block and the requirements for off-street parking and so on. So the project died. But now we are back in the market, so to speak, looking for a partner to help the church accomplish the same objective as General Baptist, to remain downtown, not to have to leave because of what's happening and the inability to develop their block. So we are seeking a partner, and of course, the greater density we can get increases the value of the church to leverage a partner similar to what we did with General Baptist, so that they can stay downtown, they can develop and do something that meets a need within the community, which obviously is housing at this point as a significant issue. I understand from a public policy standpoint, it's difficult to find that balance, but speaking to the commercial property, I can't speak to the others, that the city definitely needs to find a way to balance the need to preserve and protect and all the things that are important in terms of the historic district, but while also allowing the development of these properties, specifically the commercial properties along Blunt Street. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Fields, a commercial property owner at 515 South Blunt Street. Would like to echo the sentiments of Mr. Green, who spoke right before me. I do want to acknowledge that I am looking at this through the lens of a commercial property owner, and that is my perspective and vantage point. So I do want to acknowledge the importance of preserving the historic and cultural significance of the district for the residential communities. Without question, the heritage ingrained in this area is a vital part of the city's identity, and it is deserving of recognition and respect. Through the survey that I've taken, through the committee meetings that I've attended, and now in speaking to you today, I am proposing pursuing the hybrid solution that was offered as one of the options that removes the overlay from established commercial enterprises, specifically the 500 block corridor on South Blunt Street. This approach maintains the district for residents who've expressed an interest in embracing the historic designation for posterity, and then it also removes the economic encumbrances for business owners. Honestly, I don't know when the last time you slowly drove down that 500 block of Blunt Street, but it is an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to me as a property owner, business owner, entrepreneur, resident. Should be an embarrassment to the city. In its current iteration, this overload hampers economic development by perpetuating and sustaining a cycle of regression and blight, particularly for the local businesses on that corridor. The restrictions imposed by this historic overlay artificially deflate property values, making it challenging for business owners to capitalize on their investments. These constraints hinder our ability to innovate, to expand, to grow, to contribute to the economic growth that Raleigh all around us is experiencing. By preserving the status quo, we are stifling the very growth and revitalization that could benefit the entire community, including the preservation efforts that we value. Economic development and historical preservation are not mutually exclusive. Just want to put out a note. I finished renovating our commercial building at the end of 2019. There have been no improvements or development on our commercial 500 block in the past 5 years. So right now, the overlay district is simply preserving and highlighting a lack of progress and showcasing the worst aspects within our community. So I'm urging the City Council to vote and not delay any further in taking action to remove this overlay that negatively impacts the local businesses in this district. The solution of a hybrid is a reasonable compromise that addresses multiple perspectives and honors the past while paving the way for a more prosperous future where history and progress are celebrated. Thank you.
Chris Crew, 306 Elm Street, here on behalf of the Society for the Preservation of Historic Oakwood and on my own behalf as well. On April the 25th, the Society for the Preservation of Historic Oakwood hand-delivered a letter to each of you concerning this zoning change and urging you to take the Planning Commission's advice and vote against this change. I'd like to refresh your memory about that letter. If you need another copy, I'll be happy to provide it to you. Contiguous does not mean no vacant lots. Vacant lots are contiguous. Contiguous means sharing a common border, touching. The reference to contiguous in the guidance concerning historic districts refers to the outline, the boundary, not to the relationship of individual lots within that boundary. So I think you can wipe that out of your minds as a reason to dissolve this because it has vacant lots in it. The guidance provided through the Historic Development Commission would result in complementary properties going back onto those vacant lots and restoring some of the character and the heritage of this. I'd like to also refer you to a letter that the Historic Development Commission received October 12th, 2022 from the State Historic Preservation Office in the Department of Cultural Resources. Read you two brief excerpts from that. Historic district boundaries should be drawn to create the highest concentration of historic resources within a shared historic association, and boundaries should end where the concentration ends. The 2012 Prince Hall district boundary did that, with the exceptions noted above, when the additional vacant lots and non-contributing resources were included. So the state authority on this says it's the outline that's important, and that's what we need to preserve. Another paragraph from this letter: collectively, all three prior reductions to this district have removed only a few vacant and non-contributing resources from the district, while removing about 1/3 of the originally designated land area from the district. All three previous reductions were, in our opinion, unjustifiable removals of historic resources that contribute to the district's character. So, this is important. This is a hotbed of the civil rights movement. It would not do Raleigh proud to wipe this away. Important things have gone on here. A public process went into establishing this particular historic overlay district, as all of the other ones, and nibbling them away and reallocating these resources to the highest bidder is not the way to go. You can't consider, a change in this without another quality public process to, see what is really valuable here for an individual benefit. And you've got a couple of cases like this ahead of you where, really it is the case. We sat down together and worked for 10 long years on the UDO that lays out a lot of the framework that this rides on and works with. So again, your experts on the Planning Commission, listen to their advice. Don't nibble these historic districts away piece by piece. Let's figure out, with city support and public support, how to make the best and the most of them. I'm not aware of any studies anywhere that indicate that historic overlay district properties suffer in price or value because of that designation. I think it'd be far easier to find evidence that it increases the value of them because it increases the predictability of what you can do there. So again, for one of Raleigh's two minuscule historic districts honoring our African American ancestors. Keep this. Don't throw it away. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Joseph Lee. I reside at 106 Collington Road, property that I rehabbed in 2020. I also own property at 318 Cook Street, 705 East Lane Street. Those properties in the 90s I rehabbed to bring their values up. I bought them at a real good price. When I sold them, they sold a decent price. Right now, when I purchased them, they're around $5,000 and $6,000. Now one is at $1 million and the other is at somewhere around $600,000. The value have grown considerably since the time I was there. I now own property at, like I said, 106 Collington Road and 209 East Cabarrus Street, which is a parking lot this time. It used to be Savelli School, or Savelli Beauty School. I went to Shaw University in 1975 to 1979. I have seen that area went up. I've seen it going down. When I was there, all those properties were owned by African Americans, all of them. And now they have dissipated considerably, and we've suffered from it. We talk about generational wealth. We have lost a whole lot. And right now, we're talking about doing overlay, and I'm fine with overlay. I have no problem with overlay at all. But what could possibly happen, diminish the returns on those property and also stifles generational wealth. I have no problem with the overlay, but the restrictions that you guys impose on those properties hurt us tremendously. Because if we put those restrictions on those properties, their value, you can say what you want to say. Those properties in Oakwood, they went up. They really did. Those properties went up. But those areas, commercial developers aren't going to look at those areas and want to develop in those areas because of the restrictions. So why tie our hands here? Now, my property is located right off Blunt Street. It's on 209 East Cabarrus. And you have a lot of properties facing Blunt Street. I mean, they are good properties. And I had some input on the first property next to the Masonic Lodge Hall. I'm a member of that lodge. And we having a lot of problems trying to get that lodge situated to the point that it can represent what it really is supposed to represent. And we're having a real difficult time doing that. So what I'm saying to you is this. We've already lost a whole lot down in our area, a whole lot. More than anyone in here can believe that we've lost. And now you're trying to put restrictions on us that will make us lesser in regards to our value than we are. I'm going to maintain the ownership of my property. I'm not going to sell it. But I don't want you to tie my hands in terms of to say I can't do anything with it, and because everyone else has. And I can one instance, I went to a long time ago. I went to Dr. Dedman's office. I looked on the record. Dr. Dedman's office sold for like $500,000. You know the retail value of the properties now? Right at $6 million. So what I'm saying to you is this: we have lost a whole lot of generational wealth because of guidelines other people make for us. And all the property that was valued down through that strip are gone. Now we're going to throw a fish in the water, a hook in the water, and say, okay, we're going to pull a couple of these out, and we're going to make everything all right. That's not the way it's going to work. I might have lived to be a long time, but I know after my time's over, and my kids probably have the property I might own now, that is not going to last long. Those same properties is going to go back just like the other ones did on Blunt Street, down Blunt Street. All those properties since 1975 when I was here were owned by African Americans. They're all gone now. But now the city of Raleigh want to, again, do something that I think that's not worthy of who we are and how we're going to go forward in life. And I have a real issue with that. So I have no problem with the historical designation at all. But the restrictions that you guys put on us, that, oh, we can't go no more than 4 stories high. Okay, so that means if a guy can go 10 stories high or 12 stories high, his product gonna be a whole lot more worth than mine. So what happens? Then I'm still staying down on the bottom. But the guy right across from me, not. In fact, behind me is gonna be a hotel and apartment complex. They're going way up. I'm right next to them. But I can't go no more than 4 stories at most. So, but I'm not going to do that to I'm not going to do grocery stores. I still have a parking lot. I have no problem with that. But don't tie my hands. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. My name, Dr. Kimberly Mukhtarian, 713 Trout Lily Place, born, raised in the concrete of Raleigh, North Carolina. And I am here to talk about not just the problems that we face at or in the city of Raleigh in historic locations, but the attitude towards African Americans and anything that is owned that should be, need be, and must be preserved. And we're not just talking about buildings or streets or codes, we're talking about the very life and the quality of life for African Americans. Why do I say that? Because last year, again, you all celebrated Raleigh Hills, and you celebrated those, or you remembered those who perished in the Hedingham shooting, but we had 30 murders that year. 21 of those were Black, and the city did absolutely nothing. Yet, I can see you dancing at the Juneteenth celebration. And so that to me is very hypocritical. I will tell you that our people are damaged, so goes our property and the value that goes with it. So I am commissioned today to remind you that it is our backs that raised the taxes and made Fayetteville Street what it is today. John Hunter, a former slave on Dorothea Dix property, is who built and helped Fayetteville Street Mall to be the main street. We're asking today that you not only invest in our historic districts, but invest in the people of whom those properties were built upon. There is no city of Raleigh without Black backs. And so we want you all to think about, now that you have closed out the budget and you have appointed thousands of dollars for the silent train downtown that we built, but you have not put 1 cent into the people. And that's why you see the increase of crime and murder amongst our 13-year-olds who die and 16-year-olds who kill them. I am commissioning you to start with the people and let us rebuild our communities and freeze the theft of generational wealth in our communities. Because East College Park is where I was born. St. Agnes is where my parents were born. And the house that my grandmother bought in 1945 is now a part of gentrification. She bought it for $100 and now it's worth $475,000. I would like to see that you all put a plan together and start revisiting what has been done economically to a people so that we cannot even maintain our property and build and expand. I hope this does not fall on deaf ears. You will be accountable. I hope that I can get somebody to commit to putting that on the table and establishing a legacy that we all can be proud of in the city. Anybody? No? Their deaths are in your hands.
Good afternoon, Eugene Myrick, Southeast Raleigh resident. I heard a couple things over here, but I think the most important thing I heard was that basically when the white folks own the land, it's more valuable than when the black folk own the land. That's historic. Our land is always undervalued. That's a given. And once again, black people have always lived where we were told we could live. I mean, I just keep hearing the stories. I hear about the Masonic Temple, but then I'm learning now it was actually owned by North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance. I believe the first black owned life insurance company before they moved to Durham. I listened to stories from older residents in the neighborhood where, other than the Lincoln Theater, that Masonic Temple was the only place where black people could go. Once again, it was owned by North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance. I heard residents say, oh yeah, we used to go in there all day And we used to watch movies and we used to play games because other than the Lincoln Theater, it was one of the only places that we can go in our neighborhood. But once again, just because it's in the hands of black people, it's undervalued. But I did hear the gentleman, my fraternity brother, short grad, we both from Delta Psi, our chapter. He said when Debenham sold the property, it was for $500,000, but now it's worth a couple million. So it sounds to me like nobody's losing any value. And it's my understanding when land is scarce, it's more valuable. But to add to that, just going into the hotel piece of it all, once again, you have a planning commission in place, rejected it. You have a historic commission, rejected it. No certificate of appropriateness, no parking. So you go 12 stories, let's say all 120 rooms are filled. Where are they gonna park at? In front of Jenny's and Miss Edna's house? So you all saying we're gonna get rid of traffic, but you're talking about traffic congestion, you're talking about noise pollution, you're talking about pollution from those who don't have electric cars. So not to mention you're talking about getting rid of history. And the craziest thing I keep hearing is that, oh, well, let's put these lots, let's put affordable housing on these lots. And what y'all keep proposing is not affordable. 30% of the area median income, I just heard, and to add to the fact that I was actually looking for office space, stopped at a property on Blunt Street, called the number, and I gave you all this information. And the lady said, I'm 80. I can't fix it. I'm under contract with a developer, but call my realtor. So you have folks out here saying, oh, black people want out. No, they don't. It's the realtors, it's the developers that want out. And they're hiding behind those black people. Just like when Councilman Branch said, oh, the Prince Hall Masons went out. They never wanted out. They just wanted their building repaired. And they got over $750,000 to do that. Over $750,000 to repair that building. So add to the fact when you start talking about we need affordable housing. Now people are talking about moving Sirwell to Raleigh out. They're talking about moving the folks from Heritage Park out. But instead of looking at the area median income, go to Heritage Park and find out what is the neighborhood median income. The neighborhood median income from those folks that live in Heritage Park right now. Because this narrative that we're gonna move them out and then we can move them back, that never happens. Once again, I've lived in New York, LA, and Chicago from radio. I've been out in those streets doing radio remotes, as they were called. So I got to know these people in these neighborhoods. And I've seen this story 1,000 times already. We always saying we're gonna move somebody out and move them back in, and it never happens. That's why I'm saying, what is the neighborhood median income? How much are those folks in Heritage Park paying right now? Because if they're over there and they're comfortable right now, they should be able to go somewhere else and be comfortable. But I just don't see it happening. And this city is subsidizing unaffordability. At the end of the day, somebody should not have been able to buy property in a historic neighborhood and now say, oh no, it's mostly white now. And how long has them surveys been going around? This is probably the third or fourth time the survey has gone out, and magically, this is the first time that more people were in favor of being out of the district. So when the survey was the other way, it never came up to the city council. But now that you have folks that are in favor, now we're saying, oh yeah, let's put this to the city council now. I'm saying keep the historic overlay protection.
That's the end of your extra time too. But
all right, thank you.
Point received, thank you. That was. Yes, it was.
I thought we had 3 minutes. There we go.
3 plus 2.
Yeah, he had an entire minute left.
3, and I reset it to 2, and he kept on going.
Got it, okay.
I had 5. Yeah,
Are you, does he have another minute? I don't know. I don't want to intrude. Okay, cool. Good afternoon. My name is Keisha Monk. I'm a Southeast Raleigh resident. I kind of want to look you all in the face, but I have notes and I don't want to forget anything that I want to say, okay? So I don't mean to be disrespectful. I want to first tell you what I already know, or what you already know, which is the Prince Hall District, Raleigh's first historic Black-owned district, is at a critical juncture. The developers are acquiring properties piece by piece, threatening to erase this vital cultural and historical landmark, but you already know that. And the consequences extend beyond the loss of history. They encompass the gentrification and displacement of long-standing residents. The erosion of the Prince Hall District is not just about buildings. It's kind of disturbing to, not disturbing, but to just kind of hear this discussion about buildings and lots and property. It's not just about buildings. It's about the community that has thrived here for generations. Gentrification typically results in skyrocketing property values and living costs, driving out residents who can no longer afford to stay. This displacement fractures communities, it erodes cultural heritage, and it diminishes the diversity that makes Raleigh unique. Despite claims for support of African American communities, like Juneteenth celebrations and stuff like that, the actions of the current city council suggest otherwise. You see, behind closed doors, decisions are being made that do not align with public assurances of concern and commitment. Things like pocket listings from real estate folks and all that kind of stuff. Here's an interesting fact. I relocated here in 2012 to become Shaw University's first ever marketing and communications office. I was an independent contractor, and the first thing I did was I went down to the Downtown Raleigh Alliance. That word alliance made a lot of sense to me, to align ourselves with downtown. I suggested things like making Esty Hall a museum, doing trolley tours and things like that. And when I got back to the office, I was let go. I'll tell you why. The dismantling of the Prince Hall District has been in the works for nearly 20 years. I have tons of documents to prove this. It's all been in the works to displace this historic community. The political theater surrounding this issue is evident. I want to implore this committee today not to engage in performative acts that give the appearance of valuing our voices, the survey results, and community input. And most importantly, the RHDC, they're telling you that this ain't cool, only to turn around and make decisions that serve your own interest rather than those of the community. I can't necessarily defend those in the community with regards to why they haven't answered surveys and things like that, but I will tell you this. Misinformation breeds mistrust. Misinformation breeds mistrust. So when you have a city that hasn't been honest with you and then they turn around and want to know, hey, do you want to be in the Prince Hall District? They don't trust you. That could be why they're not responding. So to prevent the dismantling of the Prince Hall District, we need policy protections. You guys need to consider implementing policies that safeguard the district from piecemealing property acquisitions, and we need to really make a conscious effort to preserve our historical significance in this community. We also need to actively involve residents in decision-making processes to ensure that their voices are not only heard, but our needs are prioritized. And then we need transparency. We need to demand transparency from City Council to ensure that actions match your commitments, okay? Protecting Prince Hall is not only about preserving the past, but it's about securing a future where all residents of Raleigh can thrive, not just Prince Hall, but all historical districts, and that Black history is preserved and celebrated. I really hope that we can move beyond empty promises and ensure that the interests of this community are genuinely prioritized. So in closing, I just want to say that as you prepare to decide the fate of the Prince Hall District, I would like to quote the great American writer and civil rights activist James Baldwin when he said, "I don't believe what you say because I see what you do." Thank you.
Before the next speaker, can I just see a show of hands how many speakers are left? Okay. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am Edna Rich Ballantyne at 219 East Cabarrus Street, Raleigh, North Carolina. Many years ago, somewhere in Raleigh, prominent people and city staff decided over time to make Raleigh change or have changes. Changes were so slowly that the blacks in the deteriorating neighborhoods near downtown were not aware. It is their properties that are now being, their relatives are being approached to sell their properties. This was done one piece at a time out of just our knowledge, lack of knowledge and understanding of what was happening downtown. The black community not having the knowledge of this underground movement over the last 50 years. Southeast Raleigh community needed to be saved of what was left today. Southeast Raleigh originally was called 3rd Ward. Then it went to Southeast Raleigh. Then it became Prince Hall's Historic District overlay. Today, we want to save what is left. If this goes, Raleigh will have a blemish of no black history. I want to talk about a few things that were in our neighborhood. Let's start on Wilmington Street. There were several doctors on Wilmington Street. Dr. Manassas Pope, who was the first black doctor here and also ran for mayor. We had Dr. McCauley's private hospital for blacks. On Blunt Street, we had a service station, we had a barber shop, we had a grill, we had the Shell service station, we had the Deluxe Taxi Company, we had the Acme Cab Company, the Masonic Building, which also had a dentist office in it, and the YWCA. On Davie Street, we had the Davie Street Presbyterian Church that was built by Calvin Lightner, Clarence Lightner's father. On Cabarrus Street, we had, can't read my writing here, James Harris's house, who was a black legislator. We had Miss Lucille Hunter's house. We had Hayward's Funeral Home. We have 3 black families still now on Cabarrus Street. We had Rush Memorial Church. On Person Street, we had Dr. Nelson Perry's office, Dr. Thomas's office, Dr. Vass's office. On Bloodworth Street, we had lots of black businesses. We had Po' Boy's Grocery, we had Hayward's Soda Shop, we had Evelyn's Grill, we had Love's Business School. Also, the schools in the area were Washington High School, Crosby Garfield, Lucille Hunter, J.W. Ligon Junior Senior High School that was changed to be a magnet school. In all the places that I have talked about, some are here, some are not. As I start here today, I want my history not to die. My history is on Wilmington Street with one of the black dentists. My relationship to the Pope House on Wilmington Street. My relationship to St. Ambrose Episcopal Church that was on the corner of Wilmington and Cabarrus. And in addition to those interactions, my other interaction is with St. Augustine's College. It is now in a perilous situation. My history.
I'm sorry, ma'am, that's all the time.
Okay, thank you.
But I do appreciate your comments. Thank you. Our last speaker.
Good afternoon, Jenny Harper. Live on East Cabarrus Street for roughly the last 20 or so years. I am a historic preservation professional, so I have some preservation chops to be speaking to you about the special significance of Prince Hall, but also it is my community. It is unique and precious, and it is so long delayed in preservation. City staff talked about efforts, conversations around 2000 with a small area plan, which got us eventually in 2011, 2012 to historic overlay designation. But I gave you a copy here of a brochure that was produced by my beloved neighbor, James E. Williams, to his friends, J.E. J.E., all the way back in the 80s, was trying to get the city's attention about how special this community was, how precious the history of this community was, and why there was such a need to preserve it. I don't know that he got too far with that, unsurprisingly, and so he coordinated a tour of homes to try to bring attention to the neighborhood, to the district. He worked tirelessly through the 80s to try to get the city to pay attention, then in the 90s to get historic overlay designation, and at every time, the priorities of this community and the need to preserve it were put on the back burner. And it was not until 2011, 2012 that it was designated. This is not new. This is something this community wanted to have for decades, If you look at the back page to the list of sponsors there, the people in support, I don't imagine very many of them are still here. Same thing when it was designated in 2012. It is honestly shocking that there is so much credence given to present property owners. I've never heard of this happening in any historic overlay district, to be surveying current property owners when you have a historic district that is established, when it is settled, over the wishes and the efforts. You've seen the matrix of all the meetings that were held back in 2011, 2012. But again, this is not something that just crept up in the last 15 years or so. This is something that this community asked for years, and the city let them down. City let them down constantly. I had an opportunity to speak with Councilor Melton a few weeks ago, and I think it was maybe when RHDC gave their presentation on the ad hoc committee that y'all took up the question of the municipal services district. And it was really fascinating to watch y'all really get into the weeds, the minutia of an Excel spreadsheet of property owners who wanted in the MSD, who didn't want in the MSD, often in townhouse communities, condo communities. And there was a pretty robust discussion about how, well, you can't, either they're all in or they're not in. You can't just have them be piecemeal. And so it's interesting for something as significant as Prince Hall that there seems to be such disregard and not a consideration of what a piecemeal, a spot zoning would do. One of the things that has not been discussed, the city paid a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars, about a decade ago, 12 years ago, to Donovan Ripkema, who's one of the country's leading, if not the leading, preservation economist, who did a fantastic report for the city of Raleigh to dive into the economic development benefits of historic preservation. And he also provided the city with a toolkit of recommendations to help support historic preservation initiatives. One of those was a transfer of development rights program, which is something a lot of large cities do, which allows for a property owner to transfer the option of extra height to another property owner. So if you have a property in let's say in a historic overlay district that might be limited to 4 stories, that they could transfer by right to another area of the city that does not have those restrictions, so that you might have a 16-story tower then become a 20 or 30-story tower even. That is an option the city's never looked at, and it's a shame that y'all are here now to this very precarious place with this historic district and not really discussing what you can do for property owners who, as the property owner with a vacant lot says, wants the historic overlay district to remain, but also wants to be able to benefit, and that's absolutely understandable. I did also want to clarify one last thing was some comments that were made at the city council meeting. I went to all the council meetings, all the planning commission meetings back in 2011, 2012. And Mayor, there was a comment that you made about that you voted against designation because there were not enough property owners who were actually in support. Can I just make this one very quick comment? If you go back and look at the meeting minutes from April 12th, April 3rd, sorry, 2012.
Do you have it written down?
Yeah, sure.
You can, if you give it to the clerk, I'll make sure it gets recorded.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I really appreciate everyone who came down here today to share your thoughts and comments. I'm going to pull it back to the table now for us to have a conversation. Whoever would like to start. I mean, I have some thoughts. I'll start with the rezoning case because, Molly, you asked us to give us our feedback. My personal opinion is that I think what's being proposed is not likely to succeed. I think it's out of scale and scope. I think something that more closely matched the Masonic Temple building in both height and scale and material. I think you're going to have on one side of you a property that's already a hotel. It's out of this district. I think that's 7 or 8 stories. You've got the temple on the other side. I think it's 3 or 4 stories. Something in between those two for height seems like it would be appropriate. I think the RHDC did give some recommendations on some building materials, and so I think that that would be a better direction to move in. On the Prince Hall Overlay District, I've learned a lot during this process. I did have folks come to me and say, I can't replace my roof or my windows, and then I actually learned that you don't have to go through the COA process to do that. So I think part of this is there's a lack of information that maybe even some folks in the district have. And so one piece of this, regardless of what happens, is there may need to be another outreach effort of just helping folks understand what resources are available, what's required and what's not required. I am really struggling with just the vacant parcel piece. I don't have much desire to remove the district entirely, particularly now that I know that there is some flexibility for folks. Because initially my heart was breaking for people who felt like they were trapped or their values were diminished or somehow they were not able to fix things. The vacant parcels are tough for me because I personally do not like surface parking lots, particularly downtown. I've talked about that in every form of context that has come up at this table, this context, any other context. This isn't an area where we have had so many discussions about we need more people to live here, we need more amenities, we need people to walk. And so all these properties that are gravel parking lots or grass, they're not helping. I can appreciate that the State Preservation Board suggested that they not be put in. One concern I'm hearing from folks who really want to protect the district boundaries is it's being eroded piecemeal. And it seems like these vacant parcels are part of the reason because we constantly have people coming to us asking to get pulled out. I mean, our inboxes right now, we are getting, I don't know if people saw this on the agenda and thought we were doing something one way or the other, but we are getting a steady stream of people emailing us asking us to remove them from this district, even though that's not the appropriate way to go about it. And so I don't know the best way forward, but my sense is that if we're going to do something, it would be focused on the vacant lots. And maybe they're not all treated the same. I don't know, but those are just my thoughts. The only thing I have real clear vision on is the rezoning case, and I think there should be some adjustment to that to make it fit better. Anybody else?
I would concur with that. We've talked about this a lot. Vacant lots, that's not good planning. And I think if we can build more housing, do more for the community using vacant lots, I would think that would be appropriate. I also, in hearing from the folks on the 500 block of Blount Street, I'm not sure how many of those lots are vacant or whatnot. It is messy. I just want, I'm probably going to go drive by and just kind of take a look for myself so I know what they're talking about. But I think, I don't know, I don't see the value in having vacant parking lots protected. And I think the state, when they made some suggestions, agreed with that assessment. So that's kind of where I am.
I just want to add another thing too. This may sound silly, but I wish that this district were in place before all those buildings came down, because those vacant lots used to have structures on them, and they were bulldozed and pummeled into nothing because there was no protection in place. And now what we're stuck with is this weird in-between where we've lost the historically significant structures that were there. And so how do we honor that history while also allowing some flexibility for there to be new structures that could be the historic contributing structures of the future on these areas that are empty? Because I love history. I look at like the old Raleigh Instagram account and look at buildings that used to be there. I was pulling these up and seeing what they look like now. And there were some really fantastic buildings and places that used to exist in areas that now people walk and drive by and don't even give a second thought to because they don't have people living there anymore or going to the doctors there anymore, or because their parking lots are dirt. And so, I want to honor the history of the district, save what's left, and figure out how we can help facilitate and honor with what could be built in the future. And it's tricky because I don't feel like I have a clear answer to that. Councilmember Black.
Yes. So I think I have been the most unfamiliar with the Prince Hall Overlay District as a new council member last year when we were having a lot of the conversation. And through the process that we've had over the last year, I've become very well acquainted with it. I realized that I spent a lot of time in it growing up, even though I'm from North Raleigh. And it seems like we're trying to balance two to three different things, honestly. I share what Mayor Pro Tem Melton and Mayor Baldwin said specifically about the rezoning case. I would like to see it like fit into the character, or just like fit the design aesthetic of what's going on there more. And I think about, the pictures that were provided for approved new constructions and additions that are happening in the district, and it is possible to develop there. So I'm like trying to figure out where there's a way to toe the line between like bringing new development and doing infant development, but doing it in a way that doesn't completely disrupt the Prince Hall Overlay District. One of the things that really popped up for me is how much the district has changed just by owners, people who are now like coming into the area, wanting to develop the area, and now they're saying we don't want to be a part of this district. Personally, I've always wanted to live in a historic neighborhood, and if I moved into one, I would do so with the understanding that there are certain guidelines and things that reflect why I live here and why I want to live in a place like this. And I think that should be an understanding that's carried into like why we do not remove the overlay district. That's something I'm thinking about. But then it's like what Marianne Baldwin was saying, Mayor Baldwin, specifically about the businesses. I would be interested to see if there's a special character essay that could go into like reviewing things that go into the commercial elements of how we can allow people to get full use of our commercial properties, and something that can come back from like recommending that out to council today towards like the full council to then possibly looking at the special character essay. And then one of the last things that was really popping up for me last year, and during this conversation, was the resolution that we did last year on restorative justice, where we apologized for like urban renewal and disrupting Black communities. And I want this district to remain a place, or this overlay district to remain a place where we are respecting the historic character and why it came to be all together, while also allowing growth and opportunity to happen here. And if it's something that is like hindered by our COA process or certain considerations that we need to give to the commercial elements of how we can grow the district, but grow it in a way that works for the overall value of what the historic presence brings, then I would really like to see that. And I don't really have any answers either, but I definitely agree with a lot of what was said here. And finding a solution that works for everyone, but without disrupting or getting rid of the historic designation, because I do think that's really important. We don't have that many specifically Black historic overlay districts in this city.
Council report.
Bonham, I have a question for you. So one of the people who spoke suggested we do some type of hybrid with commercial spaces and leave the district as relates to the residential spaces. How feasible is something along those lines?
So the options that the commission looked at included looking at the street side overlay, which is a physical delineation versus a use delineation. That's what's present in Glenwood, Brooklyn now, and it looks just at what's proximate to the right-of-way. So it's sort of like a whole zoning mullet, like preservation in the front, party in the back.
You just said it was a preservation mullet?
Yeah. That is what
I'm
I
like trying to
said.
find the presentation, then
Yeah.
that registered 10 seconds later. Okay.
Yeah. See, you're listening. It's
Okay.
working. The concept of a use-based delineation, I think, essentially is a a boundary adjustment, which requires a rezoning. And that's something you could ask staff to study. I don't know. That's something that you could ask staff to study.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, one thing I do think that there seems to be consensus on is I do think we should ask staff to look at the essay. And so I will go ahead and make that motion that we recommend that staff look at what is the appropriate, it's called the character, what is it?
The special character essay.
Seconded by Councilmember Black. All in favor? Aye. No one opposed. So that piece we have some clarity on. We're not voting on the rezoning case. We cannot vote on the rezoning case, right? Or we can? Cannot.
Public hearing is still open there.
Right. The appropriate action for the zoning case would be to move it back to the council because the hearing has been continued to the meeting on Tuesday. At that point, if the applicant wanted to offer new zoning conditions, they could request that it be continued to a further date so they could bring new zoning conditions, or the council could continue the hearing on the second.
Okay. Well, I think there was enough discussion and consensus to give y'all some clarity on what we would like to see with the case. So I would move to refer that back out to the full council. All in favor? No one opposed. I was waiting for the mayor to call for the vote and forgot I have to do it. All right, so then that just leaves the small little issue of the overlay district. So what I'm hearing is there is no desire to remove the overlay district in its entirety. What we are having some sensitivity to are the vacant parcels and commercial properties. Bynum, what was a suggestion that you had just given to Councilmember Fort that we could ask staff to look at what?
She had asked about a boundary change to consider a boundary change related to commercial property. You could make a similar request around vacant lots. That seems where you're.
And then that would authorize staff to do the work, but we would still have to figure out whether we ultimately wanted to approve it. But at least we could get some more information on that.
Yes, and to achieve any boundary change, you can tell us to study it, but ultimately it requires a rezoning.
You'd have to authorize later.
The council would have to authorize later, yes, sir.
And does that also apply to vacant lots? Okay. One thing that would help me is more visuals. You have a map there, but I can't see what's there.
Mm-hmm.
I did pull up on my computer some of the addresses, but having some more visuals so you can see what we're talking about, I think would be helpful in the future.
And
Yes, ma'am, that's good input. Thank you.
So I also want to add that, speaking of visuals, it is possible to develop these vacant lots in a way that is meaningful to the, I mean, there is I don't know what it is right now, but it looks like an old firehouse, but it's a brand new building, and I think it's someone's house that was just built on a little vacant lot that's adjacent to a paved parking lot. So it can happen. Now, I don't know what means the folks who developed that have, if they were just able to go above and beyond, and I am hearing concerns from folks who own property in the district that may not have the same ability to do something like that. I'm not a builder, so I don't know what that entails, but it is possible to build on the vacant lots under the current rules. And it sounds like folks who have been going for COA, I mean, quite frankly, the sort of breadcrumbs I'm getting is the folks for the rezoning case would probably get their COA if they had just adjusted it a bit. And so, you know, it's not so restrictive that it's prohibiting anything, but I am sensitive to the folks who own the vacant property and the commercial properties. And if there was a way for us to even just explore what it may look like, I would be fine with giving staff that authority, with the understanding that if to even move it forward, we have to do a rezoning case later. But I am interested in just seeing what we could come up with that could thread that needle a little bit.
So for clarity, the hybrid option is looking at the boundary and possibly restructuring where the district is and like possibly removing properties, or?
I actually don't know, but I liked the idea of figuring out how we could help the commercial and vacant folks. But yes, what exactly would it be?
So I touched on two concepts in response to Councilmember Fort's question.
The mullet.
The first was that would be a rezoning for the whole district, which would be a conversion from a general overlay, which requires certificate of appropriateness review for any change in the district, versus the street side, which requires certificate of appropriateness for the portion of the property closest to the right-of-way, which is what's currently in place in Glenwood, Brooklyn. And then the other concept that we talked about was the idea of a boundary adjustment, which is ultimately a rezoning. And if you are interested in exploring that, you would direct staff to evaluate some options to bring forward to you for consideration.
I think for me, one overarching goal is, you saw it on this map, there have been multiple councils all the way back to 2015 that have been pulling parcels out, and it's just been getting chewed at. And it seems like if we can get something that is stable enough that works for enough folks, it may stop that from happening. And if the ultimate goal is to preserve as much of what's left as possible and to keep as much of the district intact as possible, then doing something that'll at least, to the best of our ability, stop this like slow erosion by these rezoning piecemeals, that may be an ultimate win for everyone. And if we could figure out how to do that through one of these mechanisms you came up with, that may be I would be interested in exploring that.
Mm-hmm. It creates more certainty.
All right, so then should we ask staff to look at that and bring it back to the council?
All of the hybrid options?
All the hybrid options, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so moved. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Okay. Mr. Raleigh?
Yeah, I just wanted to share a quick technical note.
Oh, no.
Just nothing bad, nothing bad. Just so members of the committee and any interested members of the public know, because the agenda has already been published. It actually was published while we were sitting in this meeting. The committee recommendations won't immediately appear on the published agenda right now. They'll be reflected likely tomorrow in the agenda that's now publicly available. So just wanted to put that disclaimer out there.
All right. Well, those were the two items we had today. I really appreciate everyone that came down. I think this was very helpful. I guess we will see everyone next Tuesday. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.